Hi, my name is Ken Kirk, and I attended Edgewood Elementary School from 1968 to 1974.
Welcome to the Shades Cahaba Oral History Project. I'm your host, Sean Wright. So today's edition of the podcast, it's dedicated to the school lunchroom and to everyone who worked there. And I've known my guest, Ken Kirk, for many years. We attended the same church. We did the youth group at the church. We went to the junior high and the high school, and we're both members of Troop 97 in Homewood. And we both lived in Homewood our entire lives. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Sean. Glad to be here.
So tell me, we went to the same schools. We ate the same food year after year. Was there anything that really stuck out to you? What was it at the school, any of the school cafeterias that was maybe one of your favorites?
Probably the top, I'll give you my top two.
Okay.
Mainly my top one was Thanksgiving type turkey and dressing because they invariably would do it not just on the holiday, but they would do it sporadically throughout the semester.
Right.
So that was my
Turkey
favorite.
And dressing.
Yeah, with all the fixings and all that. The second was probably the hamburgers and French fries, which was kind of a staple thing that they do like once a week, either Friday or if Friday they do it on the day before. But it was almost like a guarantee, and so that was the two lunches I would look forward to the most.
Nice. Well, so my favorite was always the chili. I loved the chili. And I loved it so much that once I went off to college and I came back and went down to the cafeteria and asked them for the recipe. And the lady was really, really touched that I wanted that I came back for it. And we started talking. She went on and on about how the best reception she ever got for her chili was she had a big bag of dried lima beans and she ground them all up and she put it into the chili and people just went wild over it. So ever since then, I've wanted to try that. I haven't had the nerve to go out and buy some, but I figured it thickened it up really well. Well, she went off to get the recipe for me. She came back with this recipe that I've still got to this day.
No kidding.
And the whole time that she was going off, I was thinking, I'm going to make some chili tonight. I'm this bachelor, I'm going to make chili for me just the way I had it back in high school. It's going to be awesome. So she came back with this recipe, and I'll read you the ingredients here.
Okay.
It started with 80 pounds of ground beef.
Wow.
Then it was 6 number 10 cans of diced tomatoes. And a number 10 can are those really, really large ones that you see. So 6 of those.
When you were in elementary school, the thing that always amazed me, you'd see these giant cans. You were thinking, do these cans really exist?
Right, yeah. And you can buy them all over the place now.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was the 2 number 10 cans of sauce or paste.
Right.
18 number 10 cans of pinto beans, 5 pounds of chili powder, and 5 pounds of onions. And basically you just mix it and cook it for 2 hours, and that was all it was. Wow. And I kept thinking, how am I going to break this down into a serving for one?
Right.
I never did figure it out. I just used something else. But that was my favorite. There were a couple more that really stuck out. I think rectangle pizza. We all love the rectangle pizza. That goes without saying. When they switched it to round pizza once, that just threw me off.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't do it for me. But the other one that I really loved was Salisbury steak or mystery meat. And if you at the high school, and I think even the middle school, if you remember, the rolls were almost these perfectly square rectangle rolls, and they were really tall.
It's almost like they were made in a square pan.
Yeah.
You could just flip them out, and
Right.
they would be that perfect shape.
So what I would do, because you could actually carve a hole in the middle of it, I would actually use my finger and carve a hole, make a pocket, and I would stuff it with mashed potatoes or the mystery meat. And that was how I loved making that food.
Probably the first steak sandwich kind of thing, like like you get now, like a gravy biscuit or something.
Yeah, and even though I make fun of mystery meat, it was still pretty good.
Yeah,
there weren't many things I disliked.
Right.
All right, so if you heard me introduce Ken at the beginning of this episode, you heard me say that he attended Edgewood Elementary and not Shades Cahaba. Now, Ken, tell me, why on earth would I have you on the Shades Cahaba Oral History Project if you attended Edgewood?
As it turns out, my great-grandmother was the second lunchroom manager that the school had in its history.
Wow. Now that's Shades Cahaba royalty right there.
Yeah, and I could always go back on that, and when I get in my old age, and tell my kids that your great was the lunchroom manager. Her name was Ida Tyler.
Okay.
She grew up in Birmingham.
All right, let me set the stage here before
ahead.
we talk about her some more. So she was the second person. So there was somebody before her, and that was Miss Blanche Evans. And Miss Blanche Evans was the home economics teacher at that time. But what she would do is she would buy groceries in Birmingham and haul them over the mountain to serve to the school. And her and a maid they would shut down the science lab in the middle of the day, and they would make soup and sandwiches and have milk for everybody. Science experiments are going on, then lunch is happening.
But no mix-up, though, right?
No mix-up. And think about this, 1920 to 25, it was difficult to get over the mountain. There was not the Red Mountain Expressway, and you were having to come over the mountain. Nobody would deliver over the mountain. I'm sure they got milk from the dairy farms out in West Homewood.
Right.
But it was a kind of a big deal. The big thing about it was not a profitable venture. Right. They were doing whatever they could to get by. The kids needed to have something to eat. And they even paid the maid in canned goods instead of real money. That was September of 1920. Now, by the second semester of 1922, the School Improvement Association had raised enough money to build a wood frame structure at the rear of the school. Now, half of it was the woodworking shop, and the other half was the cafeteria kitchen, which seems like that would just be an awful combination, as bad as chemistry and lunch. I guess it worked out.
Especially it wasn't the running joke like, this tastes like sawdust. You know?
Yeah, good point. Probably was. And they continued to use the space until 1927 when they built the new lunchroom, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the lunchroom that we used when I was growing up and everybody knows about. It's a space now that is used for the extended day program at Shades Cahaba, and it almost looks the same. So, Ken, tell me, when did your great-grandmother start working at Shades Cahaba?
I would say it was probably in the early 30s, if my memory serves me correct. And got 1932. Mm-hmm. So, and before she got hired to work there, she had worked in a tea room down on Highland Avenue. Mm-hmm. But I have a brief memory of that, mainly because my dad would go down there and hang out sometimes with her down there. Mainly, his memory of her was helping her at Shades Cahaba. Right. He would help her carry stuff that she needed or go get some stuff that she needed. I think you'd had to get stuff picked up and brought. Right. And then with the Depression kicking in, that really made things tougher. Getting the things you had to have to feed the student population was obviously more demanding. And so she worked at this tea room down on Highland Avenue. And just around the corner from that tea room, somewhere close, I'm not sure exactly where the tea room was, but there was the manager of the Claridge Manor apartment who actually recommended her. So the first principal at Shades Cahaba was James Ward, and I guess he knew him, and he said, you need to hire this lady. And I love this quote. She is not only well-versed in every department of a high-class grill or tea room, but is also a lady of very high character and personality. For those who don't know, and you might not know this, the Claridge Apartments it's just past Nyazuma. There's Hanover Circle, which is the circle behind St. Vincent's. There's a really tall building there that one of the corners is curved and it overlooks Hanover Park. Okay. And it's about a block off of Highland Avenue. So that's the area that we're talking about here. Right. So. And back in the day, I sound like my dad now. Back in the day, Highland Avenue, all along there, was like Mountain Brook. Yeah. Of today. I mean, anybody who was anybody was either living on Highland Avenue, grew up on it, or knew somebody on it, and it was a very elite and high class neighborhood. And they developed it to get away from the smog. Exactly. That was kind of the country, if you will. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could look down on all the smog and the Sloss furnace, but Ida Hamlin, was she actually married? She was married to a fine gentleman named Newton Tyler, who ironically was the first minister for Trinity United Methodist Church. And he passed away early in life, so she was a widow after that and never remarried. And she actually lived with my father's family for a while. Stayed in the same house and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually found when I was doing research on her, I actually found a lot of the places that she lived. And it seems like soon after she was widowed, she moved over to Homewood. I guess it was a lot easier to get to the school, for one thing.
Lived on Edgewood to begin with, and then moved over to Overton for a while. And that's actually where my father grew up. Basically, that he lived in a house on Edgewood for a while, for a couple of years, and then they moved and found this house on Overton Road.
Ida Tyler. She had a tough time during the Depression.
Yeah, she did.
And there's actually, and we'll talk about this in other episodes, but Shades Cahaba was one of the better run schools during that time. And the over the mountain communities really rallied behind that and kept its accreditation up. How did her lunchroom weather the Depression?
I think it weathered pretty well. And I think it's a credit for her, mainly because she had to stick to it to get through it.
Mm-hmm. And she made it profitable. It became a profitable venture, and she actually she got out of the shack in the back and turned it into a modern kitchen that carried on through the years. It's safe to say that everybody really enjoyed her food. Many considered her lunches to be the best in the country. So tell me about the traveling salesman.
One traveling salesman had proclaimed that her lunches were the best lunches he had ever had between the Tennessee line and the Florida line.
So tell me, now that we're in the 21st century, what were traveling salesmen doing eating at the high school cafeteria? I guess...
I would... Well, probably, thought, hey, whatever I'm selling, she may need something.
Well, that's true.
That's a typical salesman approach.
It's either that he was there to sell her something, or maybe that's just the way it was back in the 20s and 30s that, you got fed at those kind of places. And sure, why not? A friend of ours, Herb Griffin, we've known here at the church for years and years. He actually went on and on about her rolls. And if you know from the beginning of the episode, my love for the roll, where I put the mystery meat and stuff into it, they've loved rolls at Shades Cahaba ever since then. And so Herb, he's a 1948 graduate and a guest on a previous episode. He remembered distinctly the smell of Mrs. Tyler's rolls. I can almost
My dad actually would tell me about those rolls too. And the funny thing was, he would sometimes, after the lunch period was done for that day, whatever she had left, some of those actually went home.
Of course they did. You're not going to leave those at the school.
So he would tell me about the rolls, and they were just as good as they were when they were served at lunchtime as they were when they brought them home for dinner that night. The rolls were definitely a big plus there. So yeah.
Well, Ken, on behalf of the Shades Cahaba students everywhere, we'd like to thank you for the service that your family has given the Shades Cahaba students over the years. And before we go, I want to give you one of my favorite items that I did not mention, and it's really kind of what this whole lust for the lunchroom revolves around. My favorite item in the Shades Cahaba cafeteria were peanut butter balls. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have. I've never tried one, but go ahead.
All right, so let me tell you about it. So the peanut butter ball is made from sugar, corn syrup, peanut butter, and corn flakes or Rice Krispies, but mainly corn flakes. Okay. And you melt it and you mix it all together. And the way we would see it nowadays is it might be laid out in a pan, like a brownie pan or something, and it would harden or get solid, and you would slice it up and you would serve it that way. But I remember it at the Shades Cahaba cafeteria where it had been rolled into a ball, and they were served on those mint green melamine plates that we always had growing up.
Right.
And in my elementary school size mind, they were like the size of a baseball. They were just huge. You would come down that aisle with your tray and they would just be sitting there, and you could just eat it in your hand, kind of like a caveman. And I love that. That was my favorite meal. And my mom actually went and got that recipe for me. And you can find that recipe anywhere. She got that for me, and I'm actually going to post it in the show notes here. So the recipe for that will be there. And the high school chili recipe will be there. So if you want to go back and figure out how to get the 80 pounds of ground beef turned into a serving for one, that would be helpful for me, or maybe a serving of 4 since I've got a wife and 2 kids. So I'll have those. And there's also going to be one more thing in there. I don't know if you can remember, but you would also get a brownie. It'd be just a nice typical brownie, but there would be this thin layer of icing across the top.
Right.
Well, I found that online. It's like the Lunchroom Ladies 50-year-old brownie recipe. And I've got that as well. So I'm going to do a link to that. So there's going to be all sorts of show notes. And what I'd love to have other people do if they hear this is in the comments and on Facebook and wherever, I'd like to hear what your favorite meals were. And if you've got any of the recipes and stuff, you can share as well. We're going to do that. Again, this is our salute to Lunchroom Ladies and to Ken's family for the service they've provided us. And Ken, I appreciate you coming and taking the time to do this.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun reminiscing.
All right, let's go have lunch.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this special episode dedicated to Lunchroom Ladies. And thanks to King Kirk for stopping by and talking with me about his great-grandmother and Shades Cahaba Lunchroom lady, Ida Tyler. If you'd like to share your Shades Cahaba experiences or share a lunchroom recipe, reach out to me. You can find my contact info at shadescahabahistory.com. I'm especially interested in information about the high school, but I welcome all stories. The Shades Cahaba Oral History Project is sponsored by SeanWrightArt.com. Yes, that's me. When you visit, look for the link to Shades Cahaba and you'll find shirts and accessories featuring the exclusive Shades Cahaba Centennial logo. This logo is based on an image on the cover of the OWL yearbook back in the 1920s. It's been updated to celebrate the 100 years of the school, and it helps us to offset the cost of producing and publishing this podcast. That's SeanWrightArt.com/Shades Cahaba.